Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. I'm Shivan Channa. This is another edition of World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the global curve.
And I'm Hem Kaur Soroya. In Gaza, the situation remains dire, to say the least. As the war rages on, Israel stepped up air attacks close to the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza City. This after they ordered its immediate evacuation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the war in Gaza will be long and difficult.
And that is something that he has said several times. Meanwhile, as telecommunications were gradually restored in the Gaza Strip, calls for a ceasefire intensify further. As demonstrations continue, Russian authorities closed an airport in the city of Makashkala after protesters stormed the airport after news of an Israeli flight coming in. We will get you all the details on the show, but first, the headlines.
Israel warns Gazans to evacuate the Al-Quds hospital. Hospital staff says moving not possible as several patients are in intensive care and such action will be life-threatening. Some 14,000 people reportedly taking shelter in the hospital.
US President Joe Biden holds talks with Benjamin Netanyahu, tells the Prime Minister of Israel that Israel should conduct its offensive in Gaza in a manner consistent with humanitarian law.
Jordan asked the United States to deploy its Patriot missile system to help bolster its border defense as Israel-Hamas war flares West Asian tensions.
At least 13 people dead and over 2 dozen injured after two passenger trains collide in India's Andhra Pradesh. Primary investigation says human error led to the crash.
And India thrash England by 100 runs in the ODI World Cup. The defending champions are now out of the tournament while the men in blue are unbeaten in all of their 6 games. Now, the war between Israel and Hamas only seems to be deepening further, Shivan. Two sides as Israel continues with its attacks on the militant group.
On Sunday, Israel signaled its intent to encircle Gaza's main city. They published pictures of battle tanks on the Palestinian enclave's western coast, 48 hours ordering expanded ground incursions across its eastern border. Israel's self-declared second phase of a 3-week war against Hamas militants had initially been kept from public view, with forces moving under darkness and a telecommunications blackout cutting off Palestinians.
But according to Gaza residents, the phone and internet cuts appeared to be easing on Sunday. But the loss of communication had severely hampered rescue operations for casualties of Israeli barrages, wreaking destruction, especially on northern Gaza, which is believed to be the site of Hamas's government and command centers as well. Meanwhile, Hamas has said that its fighters were engaged in heavy fighting in Gaza, where Israel its escalated ground operations as calls multiply to deliver aid to the Palestinian territory after weeks of siege and bombardment. And as Israel continues to bomb Gaza, according to the health ministry in the Hamas-ruled Gaza, over 8,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war broke out on the 7th of October. It said on Sunday that the toll has risen to 8,005 Palestinians, including more than 3,300 minors and over 2,000 women. Meanwhile, according to Israeli officials, the fighting has killed more than 1,400 people in Israel, mostly civilians, who died in the initial Hamas attacks. Moreover, since the initial attack by Hamas, the escalation has ratcheted up domestic pressure on Israel's government to secure the release of some 230 hostages. So far, only 4 hostages have been released by Hamas.
עד כה מסרנו הודעה למשפחותיהם של 311 חיילי צה"ל הוא 239 חטופים. אני רוצה להסביר את המספר הזה. זה מספר לא נתפס, 239 חטופים. בקרב החטופים יש אזרחים עובדים זרים, מספר לא קטן שלהם, שזהותם והגעה למשפחות שלהם מורכבת עבורנו. לוקח לנו זמן לבנות את התמונה הזאת, ומכאן גם המספר שציינתי, 239. אנחנו ממשיכים במאמצים כבירים לאסוף מידע ולעדכן את המשפחות כל הזמן. מספר הנעדרים ממשיך לרדת ועומד כעת על 40.
World leaders have underlined the urgency of increasing aid to Hamas-controlled territory. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has said that the situation, and I'm quoting here, was growing more desperate by the hour as casualties increase as essential supplies of food, water, medicine dwindle. According to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, Israel is repeatedly bombing around Al-Quds Hospital in central Gaza, causing damage and putting civilian lives at risk. And according to doctors, moving hundreds of patients who are currently being treated is not possible, where some 1,400 people are seeking shelter and aid. Meanwhile, protesters worldwide have rallied for a ceasefire after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu steeled his nation for a long and difficult war. But despite calls for humanitarian truce, international outrage and potential risk to hostages held in Gaza continues. Israel, it's intensified the war triggered by Hamas's unprecedented attacks. And as I mentioned, outrage across the globe continues. We've seen demonstrations erupting in various parts across the globe. Shivan has all the details. Over to you, Shivan.
Thanks, Him. Of course, more details coming in, and none of them are pleasant. We're going to talk about the aftermath and, of course, the consequences of the ongoing war. Hundreds of anti-Israel protesters stormed Russia's Dagestan airport in Makhachkala, where a plane from Israel had just arrived, forcing security forces to close the airport and divert flights while removing the demonstrators. Now, the violence in the mostly Muslim region, which erupted amid the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, prompted Tel Aviv to call on Moscow to protect its citizens. Here's all you need to know about what just happened in Dagestan. Dozens of protesters, and they were all chanting, broke through doors and barriers. And as the chaos unfolded, some protesters even ran onto the runway. Late on Sunday, Russian aviation agency announced that the airport had been freed from the mob and would remain closed until the 6th of November. Now, these are scenes from the airport that we're showing you right there on the screen. And this is how the entire airport was stormed by the protesters. It was a mob situation. A statement from Prime Minister Netanyahu's office said, and I'm quoting here, Israel expects the Russian authorities to protect all Israeli citizens and all Jews, and to act decisively against the rioters and against incitement of violence against Jews and Israelis. Now, the Dagestan government appealed to those involved to stop their illegal acts despite anger over what it dubbed as the inhumane massacre of a civilian population, the Palestinian people. Now, the Dagestan government urged residents not to succumb to provocations of destructive groups and not to create panic in society. Now, the Minister of Information in Dagestan's neighbor, Chechnya, called for calm in the face of rising tensions in the Caucasus region. Now, Dagestan and Chechnya are both mainly Muslim areas known in Russia as republics. The region has witnessed years of violent tension with the central Russian authorities. And earlier on Sunday, a Jewish center in another North Caucasus republic, Kabardino-Balkaria, was set on fire in the city of Nalchik. Dagestan is Russia's southernmost territory and one of its poorest regions. All right, so to discuss matters further, we are being joined by John Blackland. He is an international security expert, professor in intelligence studies and international security at the Strategic and Defence Studies Centre at the Australian National University. He is also a former Australian Army officer. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on today.
John, we'll start with this. Israel has called upon Russia now to protect its citizens. And as the demonstrations and unrest spread across the globe, I just want to take, your opinion on this. It's the civilian toll which is is worse than anything else. It's the civilians who are taking the toll. We are already seeing the thousands of deaths, including children and women in Gaza. And now the scare of their lives that the Israelis would have faced when they landed in Dagestan with that kind of a mob waiting outside. How do you see the war moving forward from here? Do you feel Israel and Russia exchanging any kind of a note will have impact on the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas?
No, it's a great question. So it does point to one of the reasons why Israel has always been very circumspect about how it engages Russia. And it is one of the reasons why Israel refrained from being enthusiastic in supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. It knows that Russia has a lot of influence it can wield that can directly affect Israel and Israeli people around the world. Israel has a lot of economic interests in various places, and it relies to a certain extent, on Russian goodwill. So this also points to a phenomenon that is happening worldwide. And Hamas, my reading of this is that Hamas knew that this was the kind of reaction it would engender, and that that Israeli reactions to Hamas and the attempt to more than just so-called mow the grass, but actually insert themselves back into North Gaza would engender very strong emotional reactions. We're seeing this in the UK, we're seeing it in France, we're seeing it in Australia, in the United States, and here we see it in Dagestan as well. This is exactly what Hamas has wanted, and the rhetoric coming out of Gaza is that. And I would contend also that the numbers that you are hearing out of Gaza need to be challenged, because the source of them are that, this is from Hamas, and Hamas is fighting a propaganda war as much as a real war, a substantive, kinetic war. And let's not forget that Hamas has spent years building up its infrastructure to fight a war, and much of that is underground. So when we talk about hospitals, when we talk about food and power shortages, let's not forget that Hamas has been storing up for this for a long time. And let's also not forget that they have many, many miles of tunnels where many, many people can fit. And that a lot of power and energy, and particularly fuel, has been stored to enable the air filters and the fans and the regeneration to take place underground. So the focus, it's very interesting, the focus has been what's happening on the surface, and there's been great footage that the Hamas have used to excite support for Hamas around the world, and of course that is exactly what they've been looking for.
Mr. Blackland, also let's talk of the role of the international community here. United States and Egypt have committed to acceleration, this is what they've said, acceleration of assistance to Gaza. How do you think this will materialize, given how volatile the situation remains on ground?
So, of course, let's not forget that prior to 1967, the 67 war, the Gaza Strip was part of Egypt. And so Egypt has a long connection with Gaza, and Egypt has long, for the last few years, kept a very tight control on the Gaza border with Egypt. So when we talk about Israeli control of Gaza, and people talk about the occupied territories, Gaza has been, the Israelis vacated Gaza nearly 2 decades ago, 18 years ago. The West Bank is a different kettle of fish, but Gaza has not been controlled internally by Israel for nearly 2 decades. And Egypt has actively sought to distance itself from the Gaza problem, really knowing that most of the kind of bad reputation arising from that was going to stick on the Israelis. But of course, we now have a situation where Egypt appreciates that this has the potential to blow out, and it can undermine the government of in Egypt as well, in Cairo. And so they, I think, recognize that they need to be making a contribution to keep this in check. This has the potential to seriously expand, not just around Gaza, but of course in Lebanon, where Hezbollah is armed to the teeth with Iranian-supplied missiles, and the Syrians also seem to be interested in itching for a fight with Israel. So this is a very tricky predicament. Connections with Iran, the Russian dimension, the fact that the US Navy and NATO is in the Mediterranean in unprecedented numbers means that the stakes are getting higher and higher. The prospects of this deteriorating further are significant. And hopefully the deterrent effect of the fleet in the Mediterranean will keep in check the prospects of Iran and others, perhaps even Turkey, contemplating providing more support to Hamas.
Mr. Blackland, I just want to come to this next, and it needs a large perspective, because efforts from global organizations, they've honestly failed to bring any kind of a difference on ground. What can really bring a ceasefire here? Because if you look at Israel and if you look at the Gaza Strip, you can barely identify it on the world map. It's a very tiny enclave, but what is happening there has involved the entire world as of now, but nothing seems to be bringing a change on what is happening on ground. What can bring a ceasefire as of now?
So it's got to be political. War is an extension of politics by other means. We understand that. And of course, the conundrum is what kind of political solution might work here. And there are a few options that are probably worth contemplating. One is, of course, that the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank could actually gain some authority over Gaza. The other one is one that hasn't got much airplay so far, but which I think has got some merit, is actually a revisiting of the Egyptian governance of Gaza. Egypt has a strong, close relationship with Gaza. It's had a fairly arm's length relationship with Hamas itself, but with Hamas being sidelined by the Israelis now, I think there is a prospect for a reimagination of what we do with Gaza in a way that involves Egypt in a way we haven't seen for half a century. And of course, in addition, there's a big question hanging over the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, and there's a question here whether or not internal domestic Israeli politics allows for a reimagination of its approach to the Palestinian question.
That needs to be taken up again, at the political level. There is where the essential, any kind of a ceasefire, any talks for those have to stem from political movements coming in. And thank you so much for joining in on the broadcast, sir. Always a pleasure to speak with you. That was Mr. John Blackland joining us on World DNA with his inputs.
Now, world leaders have condemned Israeli actions in the Palestinian territories, where more than 8,000 people have been killed in over 3 weeks.
While the horror in Gaza continues to make global headlines, West Bank is also witnessing a rise in violent settler hostility now. France condemned the unacceptable Israeli settler attacks on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. And the situation in West Bank was already tense before the war, with regular raids by Israeli forces and an upsurge in attacks by Israeli settlers against the Palestinian population there.
But since the outbreak of the war in the Gaza Strip, more than 100 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank, mostly during raids by Israeli forces or attacks by settlers. This is according to the Ramallah-based health ministry.
It's not just the killing of the Palestinian people. Most of them have also been forced to relocate from the region. Considering the situation in the region, the Foreign Ministry of France has issued a statement urging Israel to take immediate measures to protect the Palestinian population here.
Now, the violence perpetrated by settlers against the Palestinian population, it's multiplying, which is unacceptable, and that it must stop. Israel's closest ally, the United States of America, has also warned Israel. The American President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with each other on Sunday, where Biden called in on Netanyahu to ascertain that Israeli offensive is consistent with international law.
Now, in a separate statement, the White House also urged Israel to protect innocent residents of Gaza by distinguishing between the militant group Hamas and the civilians in the territory.
Israel's military has been urged to avoid civilian casualties in Gaza, where health officials in the Hamas-run territory say more than 8,000 people, as we mentioned earlier, have died in 3 weeks of Israeli siege. There's catastrophic humanitarian crisis in the making. Gazans are running out of basic necessities. There's a shortage of water, food and medicine. Flow of humanitarian aid that recently started has been slow and inconsistent.
Now, in view of the horrifying situation in Gaza, International Criminal Court's top prosecutor has said impeding relief supplies to Gaza's population may constitute a crime under the ICC jurisdiction. The top prosecutor further added that Israel must make discernible efforts without further delay to make sure civilians receive basic food and medicine.
And I want to underline clearly to Israel that there must be discernible efforts without further delay to make sure civilians receive basic food, medicine, anesthetics, morphine. We hear reports of operations taking place without these basic medicines, as if we're in the Middle Ages. In this regard, I have to say that Israel has clear obligations in relation to its war with Hamas. Not just moral obligations, but legal obligations to comply with the laws of armed conflict.
Now, at least 13 people have been killed and over 24 injured after two trains collided in southeast India.
Now, the train collision between a Visakhapatnam-Palasa passenger train and the Visakhapatnam-Ragada passenger train caused a derailment between the towns of Alamanda in Andhra Pradesh, and the accident occurred after one of the passenger trains overshot a signal.
India's Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw briefed about the trains which have been pulled back due to the accident on his social media account now. He further tweeted that all injured have been shifted to hospitals.
Vaishnaw also announced the compensation disbursement, 10 lakh, that is near $1,200, will be given to the kin in case of death, while for grievous injuries, 2.5 lakhs, that's about $3,000, and for minor injuries, 50,000 rupees or about $600 have been allocated.
The Indian Prime Minister wrote on X that he had spoken with the country's railway minister and that he extends condolences to the bereaved families and prays that the injured recover soon.
India, it has one of the world's largest rail networks. It has seen several disasters over the years. The worst in 1981, when a train derailed while crossing a bridge in Bihar state and plunged into a river below, killing an estimated 800 people. In the most recent history, in June, a triple train collision killed nearly 300 people in Odisha state. In August, at least 9 people were killed when a coach parked in southern India caught fire as a passenger tried to make tea. And with that, it's time now for a short break. We'll continue to bring you all the updates on the other side as well.
Don't go anywhere. Lots more. The death toll from a fire at a coal mine in Kazakhstan rose to 45. Emergency teams engaged in an operation to find one remaining miner believed to have been underground. And we will get you all the details on this.
Also on the other side, from the world of technology, X has introduced 2 new premium subscription plans. We'll of course get you all the details. Do stay tuned.
WION, India's global voice.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions,
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation. You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered the growth phase. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week, the India story will bring the most incisive analysis, the most authoritative voices.
India will be a significant pole in the universe of AI going forward.
India is walking tall, India's stature is different, India's voice is being heard.
And the biggest newsmakers.
This is just a start. Tokyo, we won one bronze. Paris, we won a rocket. Good to see that, women cricket is getting more excited and everybody is looking up to that.
And these stories need to be told, and they are guided by...
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us on the show so far. We've brought you all the latest updates from the Israel-Hamas war, where the death toll, it is over 8,000 in Gaza and about 1,400 in Israel. We'll, of course, continue to bring you all the developments through the day as well.
There was also a massive protest which took place in an airport in Dagestan on the news of an incoming flight from Tel Aviv. Of course, those were details that we will be tracking through the day. Also, a major train collision in India's Andhra Pradesh state where 13 people have died, and we are bringing you all the updates on that. All that has happened till now. Let's get you started with the headlines that we're tracking at this hour and move forward.
Israel warns Gazans to evacuate the Al-Quds hospital. Hospital staff says moving it's not possible as several patients are in intensive care, and such action will be life-threatening. Some 14,000 people reportedly taking shelter in the hospital.
US President Joe Biden holds talks with Benjamin Netanyahu, tells the Prime Minister that Israel should conduct its offensive in Gaza in a manner consistent with humanitarian law.
Israel says it carried out strikes on military infrastructure inside Syria as fears of conflict spilling over to West Asia grow.
At least 13 people dead and over 24 injured after two passenger trains collided in India's Andhra Pradesh. Primary investigation says human error led to the crash.
Red Bull's triple world champion Max Verstappen becomes the first Formula driver to take 16 victories in a season after he wins crash-halted Mexico City Grand Prix. Now in news from India, multiple explosions rocked the state of Kerala. The bombings targeted a prayer meeting of the Jehovah's Witness sect in the Kalamassery in Kerala.
Now, after the incident, many Indian cities, including Delhi and Mumbai, were put on high alert.
The incident took place at the Zamra International Convention and Exhibition Centre, where around 2,500 faithful from across the state had gathered for a prayer session. 3 killed and 51 others were injured in the 3 explosions at the prayer meet that was attended by nearly, as I mentioned, 2,500 people.
Visuals of the incident showed fire rescue and police personnel in large numbers evacuating people from the site, which has now been cordoned off. Kerala's police chief said an improvised explosive device, an IED, caused the blast at the convention centre. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has called for an all-party meeting on Monday morning at a government secretariat.
In the convention center, Jehovah's Witness regional convention was happening, and all our senior officers, including the Commissioner of Police and others, are at the spot. Preliminary investigation shows it is a IED device, and we are examining it.
Now, hours after the blast, a 48-year-old man has claimed responsibility and has surrendered.
Person has surrendered in Kodagara police station in Thrissur rural in the morning, claiming that he has done it. His name is Dominic Martin, and he claims that he belonged to the same group of Sabha. We are verifying it.
The National Investigation Agency of India has taken over the case as directed by Home Minister Amit Shah. It will be probing the terror angle, including national and global links.
Coming in the wake of the Israel-Hamas conflict, police in various cities and states took precautionary measures. Security was tightened at churches across Delhi and Mumbai. The police said a special vigil was being kept in crowded places. In the state of Uttar Pradesh, police said special surveillance has been ordered in many districts, including Kanpur, Meerut, Varanasi, Aligarh, Lucknow, Bhagpat, Bareilly, Rampur, Agra. Jehovah's Witnesses are an international Christian denomination founded in the United States around 1870. They are best known in many countries for door-to-door evangelism.
The group said it has about 60,000 followers in India, and we are tracking all the developments through the day, all that is coming in from Kerala. Bangladesh police arrested 2 opposition activists over the death of a policeman in violent protests that took place on Saturday.
At least 164 Bangladesh Nationalist Party members, including Party Secretary General Mirza Alamgir, have been picked up for questioning.
Now, the arrest came as security forces patrolled Dhaka on Sunday during a countrywide strike called by the BNP. The protests on Saturday were the biggest so far this year, and more than 100,000 supporters of the 2 major Bangladesh opposition parties attended the public rallies as they demanded Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to step down.
Now, the protests on Saturday also called for the release of BNP leader, who is under house arrest after her conditional release from prison in 2020. Since 2018, Zia has been serving a 17-year jail term after she was convicted in 2 corruption cases.
The violence comes as the nation gears up for the January 2024 polls. 3-term Premier and incumbent Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is determined to win a 4th successive term now.
Hasina has been in power for 15 years. As I mentioned, Hasina has been in power for 15 years and has overseen rapid economic growth, with Bangladesh overtaking neighbouring India in GDP per capita. But the period has also seen inflation rising rapidly, and her government is further accused of corruption and human rights abuse. Now, the death toll rises to 45 in Kazakhstan in a mine fire incident that took place on the 28th of October.
2 days on, the rescue operations are still underway as 1 mine worker is still underground, and the government in Kazakhstan is closely monitoring all developments. And this is the nation's biggest mine tragedy since 2006.
Now, following the tragic incident, the company Arcelor has signed a deal for nationalization of its mining operations. This is not the first accident that has taken place in Central Asian nation involving the company Arcelor. It operates dozens of mines in resource-rich Kazakhstan.
Registered in Europe's Luxembourg, the company has a history of deadly disasters in Kazakhstan. In 2006, a fire incident at one of ArcelorMittal's mining sites left 41 miners dead. In 2022, the Kazakh government had threatened ArcelorMittal to ban its operations. A worker died at its factory in the city of Termitau. The company has regularly been accused of failing to follow the nation's environmental regulations and safety norms. All right, let's get started with all the updates from the tech sector. For all the ex-users out there, the platform has introduced 2 new premium subscription plans for its microbloggers.
Now, first is the $16 per month Premium Plus plan, and the Premium Plus plan offers the users largest reply boost. Now, in simple words, it will give the users reply more attention so that more people can see it. Basically, it will be discoverable by a wider audience.
And they make more money out of it as well. Now, the plan also removes ads from the For You and Following feeds for a clean ad-free feed with no commercial interruptions. Building on their existing premium plan, which costs $8, Premium Plus offers a blue checkmark, tweet editing, longer posts, video uploads, encrypted direct messages, and more than this. Now, X has also introduced a basic plan at $3 per month.
I have to say, Shivan, at this point, I'm finding it really hard to keep up because I thought the blue check, the verified mark, was already included in the previous subscription
plans. Yeah, now the
plans.
blue tick doesn't mean too much as it did at one point of time.
Right, I think we're going to have to make a list because it's getting really hard to keep up here. However, this plan doesn't offer verification. It provides a small boost for replies and lacks reduced ads or access to excess media studio.
Exactly. So if you pay just $3, this is as much as you get. If you need to get more, you pay more. Both plans are currently available for web purchase only. In addition to these updates, ex-owner Elon Musk has introduced new features like live streaming, video and audio calls, and even plans to include banking services. Musk is actively exploring ways to monetize the social media platform he acquired for $44 billion in October 2022.
And of course, our other major focus in technology is AI, and Google is putting billions behind its AI ambitions by investing a whopping $2 billion in OpenAI's direct rival, Anthropic.
Well, this investment comes on top of Google's earlier support of $550 million for Anthropic. Anthropic is co-founded by former OpenAI executives Dario and Daniela Amodei. Anthropic operates a chatbot named Claude, which is similar to OpenAI's ChatGPT. It's a clear sign that Google is stepping up its efforts to compete with Microsoft in integrating AI into all their products.
Now, Amazon is also jumping in on the bandwagon here with a commitment to invest up to $4 billion in Anthropic. This move firmly establishes Amazon as a significant player in the competition for leadership in AI for cloud services.
Amazon's investment includes a $1.25 billion note from Anthropic. This investment from Amazon functions like a loan that can be converted into ownership shares in the next funding round. And additionally, Amazon has the option to invest up to $2.75 billion more, but that option will expire in early 2024.
Now, this mirrors Google's strategy, as they've already put $550 million into Anthropic and committed to another $1.5 billion in the future. On to news now from the world of business. With the escalation of hostilities with Hamas, JP Morgan Chase predicts that Israel's gross domestic product is likely to contract by 11% annually in the current quarter.
Well, the battle broke out on the 7th of October between Israel and Hamas when Hamas rampaged across southern Israel. According to JP Morgan analysts, the bank's original forecast regarding the economic impact of the fight were too optimistic, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's warning of a long and difficult battle was released around 24 hours before Israel's widely anticipated ground assault of Gaza, which is ruled by Hamas.
Now, the bank's projections are the most gloomy projections made by stock market experts. However, investors have already begun unloading their Israeli holdings. Since the 7th of October, the shekel has fallen to its worst level since 2012, and the major Tel Aviv stock index, it's down 11% in local currency terms.
Now, according to JP Morgan, Israel's GDP will increase by 2.5% this year and by 2% in 2024. Analysts at JP Morgan said gauging the impact of the war on Israel's economy remains difficult, both due to still very high uncertainty about the scale and duration of the conflict and the lack of high-frequency data on hand.
Now, they claim that Israel's recent wars barely affected activity, including the 7-week struggle with Hamas in 2014 and the 6-year war with Hezbollah in Lebanon, which began in 2006. However, the current war has had a much larger impact on domestic security and confidence.
Israel's central bank kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 4.75%. The shekel ended its worst losing streak since 1984 on Friday, as the decision not to loosen monetary policy helped the currency rise for the first time in 13 days.
But one day after Israel's ground invasion of Gaza, West Asian markets, which opened for trading on Sunday, showed no hint of concern. Tel Aviv's TA35 stock index finished the day up 1.3%. The stock market has dropped 11% since the war broke out.
All All right, hosts India remained unbeaten at the ongoing ICC ODI World Cup as they thrashed defending champions England by 100 runs in Lucknow.
And the defeat all but ends England's hopes of qualifying for the semi-finals. And 1996 World Cup winning coach Doug Watmore breaks down another hapless England performance, along with WION Sports editor Digvijay Singh Deo. Listen in.
Is this the worst performance of a long line of bad performances?
Yeah, I would say so, because they had a good opportunity to win it today. They did enough good things in that first half, but clearly they just looked disinterested. They looked like they didn't want to fight, which is really surprising to me. Like you think they'd walk over cut glass to get at least another win on this series, but they just weren't interested.
But that's a very strong statement from you to say, as we're seeing the scorecard on our screen, India winning by exactly 100. This after India scored 229, and Liam Livingstone got 27. I don't think anyone else reached 20. I'm just going to cross-check that as well. No other England batter reached 20. 8 of them got into double figures. This is, we'll talk about the Indian bowling, which was sensational, but we have to talk about the England batting, because if we thought that at the end of the last game it was the end of an era, this shows it's over. I mean, that great England white ball team, it's gone. Well played. Thank you for the memories. Time to move on.
And they weren't novices. This is why I'm really disappointed. These guys were talked up about how good they are. Like, okay, this team was lost a few games, but you're not a bad team overnight. And they weren't novices, and really 230 runs to win, and they just didn't want to fight. I mean, yes, the first 5 overs, no problem. I think they were 30 runs for no wicket.
Yeah, and then they went to 40 for 4.
Yeah, well, that's right. They lost 4 wickets in a hurry because they weren't prepared to fight it. And really, I'm still shaking my head just to understand, their inability to understand the situation and show some fight.
Let's also now take a look at what's making news in the world of football. Defending champions Manchester City thrashed rivals Manchester United 3-0 in the derby at Old Trafford. Goal machine Erling Haaland converted a penalty to put the visitors ahead in the 26th minute. The Norwegian doubled City's lead just after restart when he headed home from a Bernardo Silva cross. This was Haaland's 11th league goal, and it equals the total goals scored by United in the league so far. Phil Foden completed the route in the 80th minute, which saw many United fans leave before the final whistle. Pep Guardiola's side are third in the standings with 24 points, 2 behind leaders Tottenham Hotspur. The Red Devils are 8th with 15 points. Lyon coach Fabio Grosso suffered a head injury as fans attacked the team bus by throwing projectiles in Marseille. Grosso suffered a deep cut above his left eye that required stitches. The incident forced the French League soccer game between 10th place Marseille and bottom of the table Lyon to be postponed. Coaches carrying Lyon fans were also reportedly attacked. The police said that they have arrested 7 people suspected of being involved in Sunday's incidents, but did not give any further details.
All right, and finally on World DNA, let's get you all the updates from the entertainment world. Alison Lagrange takes it away.
Matthew Perry, the beloved actor who gained fame for playing Chandler Bing on Friends, died at his Los Angeles residence. He was just 54. His departure has left fans and the entire entertainment world in mourning. Let's take a look at his legacy in the realm of comedy.
I just want to be married again.
And I just want $1 million. That's fine, that's great. Okay.
Friends wouldn't have been the romantic comedy series without Matthew Perry. When the series first started, Chandler Bing was the designated funny guy of the show.
Don't you have to pee? Why I'm dancing.
The love story of Ross and Rachel was the engine of the show's plot, but it was Chandler and Monica's love story in the later seasons that jumped out of TV screens and stayed with the audience.
First time I knew that you were the woman that I wanted to dance all my dances with.
Like his co-stars Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, Matt LeBlanc and David Schwimmer, Perry was relatively unknown when he landed the role. The show's creators Marta Kaufman and David Crane knew that for Friends to work, there had to be chemistry. Perry, with his talent, just managed to become everyone's favorite.
Oh, sorry, did I get you? No, you didn't get me. It's an electric drill. You get me, you kill me.
Perry's distinctive contribution to the cast of Friends was evident in his involvement in shaping Chandler's character. It's a well-known fact that Perry contributed significantly to the show by writing many of Chandler's memorable lines. Friends graced television screens from 1994 to 2004 and remains an enduring classic, loved by fans. In addition to his iconic role on the show, Perry ventured into various film projects, including The Whole Nine Yards, 17 Again, and The Odd Couple.
I'm not going to be embarrassed anymore.
While Matthew Perry brought laughter to millions through Chandler, he also faced personal challenges with alcoholism and drug addiction. His struggles with alcohol continued even during the filming of Friends, with Perry confessing in interviews that he was frequently intoxicated on set. Matthew Perry's battle with alcoholism eventually led him to achieve sobriety, a remarkable personal journey that inspired many others facing similar challenges. He became an advocate for addiction recovery. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The Guinness World Records has recertified Madonna as the biggest selling female recording artist of all time. More details in our next report.
The Queen of Pop continues to reign when it comes to music sales. Madonna, who is currently on her celebration tour, has been recertified by the Guinness World Records as the biggest selling female recording artist of all time. She has reportedly sold more than 400 million records, albums, singles, and digital during her 40-year music career. The singer has held the record since 2009, Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, Rihanna, and Mariah Carey following right behind. The Guinness World Record says Madonna has earned more than $1.3 billion from her tours, and that number is likely to increase after her latest stint. This year, Madonna also has competition following Swift's The Eras Tour, which finished its first US leg in August, and Beyoncé's Renaissance Tour, which wrapped in October. Guinness World Records has yet to certify either of those two tours' record-breaking sales. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
That's all from me for today. For now, it's over to our New Delhi studio.
And with that, we call to wrap on this edition of World DNA.
Stay tuned, keep watching WION World is One. News and updates continue on the other side.